So, welcome to dustyfeet.com, because this is a place where we can safely explore the endless ways of God and the interconnection of His creation, where belief understandings, they may be challenged, divine misunderstandings, they may exist in traditional teachings, they just might falter as we pursue connection, context, and community with God and each other here in an environment of grace and love. So, feel free to journey around the space. Explore. We have many different topics for discussion. Outside the class, Sons of the Father, the Bible Project, Aleph Beta, Follow the Red String, and more. So lend your ear, then lend your voice. Join a conversation, start a conversation, ask questions. Because on this journey, you're probably around folks that just might be pondering the same thing. Community that can build and connect. So come in and join us. And welcome to the Dusty Feet. Oh, and good evening. Welcome to the Dusty Feet. It's August 24th, 2023. And this is another one of our special series, The Sons of the Father. We're going to continue our discussions on The Chosen, created by Dallas Jenkins. We're going to be wrapping up season 2 by talking about episode 8, Beyond Mountains. So during this series, my dad, John Warren, my brother, Jim Warren, and of course myself, we're going to be having a conversation. And we'll be reflecting on things that have impacted us along that way. So, welcome to the Sons of the Father. In the description below are links to all of the audio, video, and source documents that we use here in the Dusty Feet. We want to make sure that any material we use here is properly credited to those folks who work so hard to bring it to us. Without their efforts, the learning we do here does not happen. And of course on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and click that bell icon if you want to remind. So here we are, the Sons of the Father. And again, something to reference up front. Sometimes issues can arise from discussions like these and the assumptions that we have on others listening. It is always unintentional, but if you don't understand or have questions concerning something that we've discussed, please feel free to leave a comment and we'll respond as best we can. Or you can just send an email to bob@thedustyfeet.com. Sometimes just a more private way to ask questions. That's easy. Okay, Beyond Mountains. So, in the opening scene, of course, along with the debut of Judas, of course, we didn't even find out that it's him, right? Until the end, we don't get any names, right? But it's interesting that we start off with Judas not being comfortable with deception, right? A calculated deception that Judas has a problem with this. So it's interesting where we'll see his take there, right? But we kind of pick up where we left off in a sense. There's still more discord. They're still at odds with each other. So are they uncomfortable or are they afraid? Okay. But then Thomas says something. This is what I want to lead us off with. Thomas makes a statement in how I think it's Andrew's reacting. And Thomas makes a statement, and he says, in a most generous statement, I'd call that love. Okay?
The bickering back and forth, yes.
So my question is, is it? Is it love? Okay. Because here, if you say yes, interesting. But if I asked you this before and I were to ask you to describe love to me, okay, is this something that you would have included in the definition? Okay. So if not, interesting. Okay. Just food for thought on that. So, okay, Daddy-O, shoot it.
Well, I think it's interesting. First of all, it's the interesting thing to me is I've had a stroke between when we had the last episode of when we're filming this one, a real honest to goodness stroke.
Oh, a real full blown. I was there. Full blown.
Yeah. And it was very interesting. God has brought me through it, but it kind of made things different to me, brought things different to me as because I thought a lot about this and the job I used to have and how planning. That's what they were doing when they were all gathered there. And your comment about is it love? And each one of them had their own. It's a comment even made by one of them. Is what they all had a different idea of how this was going to play out, and they were scared. They were fearful, in my estimation. Just going back to when we used to do it, when I was the speaker, I didn't get involved with it as much as when Johnny was the speaker, and you were preparing everything for her. And you didn't know you knew some of what she was going to talk about, but you didn't know exactly. But how do you get everybody on board with it and comfortable with it? And how do you get prepared for it? And I was going in and working with people like they don't know each other very well. They're still getting to know each other. They don't know who. One of them comes in and he's exercising. And what is it? Andrew that says taking care of your body like that is not, and so they're bringing this fear factor of that they don't have any power over what's going to happen. They don't know how many people are coming. They don't know if anybody's going to come, and so they're, instead of digging in and getting after it, they start bickering with each other. Yeah, the guys. Right. Mary's over here with Rama doing her thing, and Mom Mary is in with the Ethiopian, and they're not worried about what the guys are doing. They're there getting ready to get the preparation ready and get the word out, get the people in. And these guys, all the pressure they were putting on themselves. They wouldn't. Yeah. Jesus wasn't putting any pressure. He wasn't hanging around saying, have you got this thing planned out? Do you know where the people are going to sit? He didn't care about any of that. All he cared about was what he was going to say. Yeah. And he was talking with Matthew about it, of all people. And I thought that was really interesting, is what they came up with, how they came up with that. And he was so cool about it, about what he was thinking about it, which I had never thought about beforehand. It was just, okay, these people are gathered around. Okay, I got some things I want to say. So sit down, and not the planning that went into getting the audience spread out properly, getting people in between them there, and all the things that they did to make sure that everybody got the same message at the same time. And this was, they were worried. And let's see, they decided that they all loved the rabbi and they trusted him. But they all expected him to do something different. They didn't expect him to do it the way that he was doing it. It's like he's not interested. He was very interested in what he was going to say to the people.
Mm-hmm.
And he had complete faith in them for getting the people there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really one of those things that brought a lot of memories back to me on how we used to fret and fret and fret over getting the audience there and making things just right. And it wasn't just us. We didn't have Jesus at the head of it. We had another human being that wanted a crowd there. She didn't travel 3,000, whatever miles for it. So it was loaded with confusion as well as thoughts. I mean, it was loaded with all kinds of different emotions. Not even we'll talk later about Shmuel and his whole plan for what was going on and everything else. So yeah, I just loved it. I loved all the. It got me off of worried about the stroke I had and on to thinking about something else, and that was great for me.
Yeah.
Jim, what about you?
It's like the season started off strong and just kept getting better and better, and this was a great culmination in terms of episode, well written, powerful for me. I remember, Bob, you talked about the fact that at the end we've realized Judas is that guy who at the beginning,
Who he is, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, because I watched it, I don't know, a year ago or so originally, and I'd forgotten. And literally as soon as he said Judas, I started crying. I mean, I lost it.
Yeah.
And I think it was a combination of nobody starts out bad. He had good intentions, and I think he wanted, and so you see that, and something's going to obviously change in him. But you don't follow Jesus, without wanting something
Mm-hmm.
different.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a combination of that, of the realization that he went from, a good guy to not. The other part was just the loss that Jesus is like, just thinking about the loss that Jesus was going to have because of what Judas did.
Right.
A loss of, a follower.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole thing just welled up in me.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other emotional part for me was when Mary was talking to Jesus, her son, and she, talked about missing Joseph. And, I think she'd asked him, are you thinking about your father? And he's like, which one? And it's like, yeah, that's, yeah. So that was good. But to get back to what you were saying, Bob, of, that first, and to be fair, the statement was in its most generous explanation,
Right.
it's love.
Right.
So he's not saying it's love. He's saying at best it's love.
At best.
Might not be.
Might not really be. And,
right.
No, you're right. And it's a good point.
And in that, I think what he was saying is these are guys, I think they love Jesus. But like you were saying, Dad, but they all kind of looked at him differently. And so there were different expectations about what was going on. The other thing, too, is nobody fights as good as a family, right? And so this is a family who loves each other, but they're fighting with each other. If they didn't like each other, they could just walk away. Right. So, yeah, I do think there's an underlying I was thinking of the rebar. You've got rebar and concrete. There's an underlying rebar of love that's going on there, even though, yeah, they're at each other because they're scared and they're trying to figure out what's going on.
Right.
The whole fear of what if nobody shows? What if everybody shows? It's like you got both ends of the spectrum there. We don't know how to deal with either of those scenarios. We have no idea what to do here. And I used to put together conferences for Neil Anderson. And I remember going in and trying to put all this stuff together. And, it was, is everybody going to show up? And how's everything going to go? But I wasn't the speaker. I was one of the
Mhm.
disciples, just kind of getting things going and putting it together and having that anxiety, but also the excitement. And that was the other thing that I loved was the enthusiasm that was going on as you know the crowds were coming and people were telling others about come and check him out kind of thing. And it's like, when was the last time I was that excited about sharing Jesus? And it just kind of went, oh wow, because I say I'm passionate about Christ, but am I going out grabbing people and saying, hey, come here, you got to check this out? Although yesterday, no, 2 days ago, I did tell a couple of people about the Bible Project. I was like, you got to check it out because it's so cool. And also The Chosen. It's like, here's something that I think you guys could get and could understand. But I just loved the enthusiasm that was going on of everybody just wanting to see what he was going to say.
Yeah.
And so it was a great episode. There's more to it, but that's my kind of main part.
It's great points about their passion to do something. Their motivation is whatever it is, because there is a subtext here that we've bled over from the previous episode into this, is that one of the reasons they're scared is because Jesus has been Quintus takes him to go get the guys to have this little conversation, of which point is entertaining to say the least, of which both get an idea. Okay, so we both know what we can and cannot promise, right? So we get that Jesus is like, look, I'm coming back. Now, whether he knows that or not, we can debate that. Okay.
Yeah.
But to he's like, this isn't my time yet. It's not the deal. It just, we need to go do the deal. And they're all worried about this. The women, you're right, Dad, brought up the point that they're still focused on it, right? Yeah. That they're still in their deal, staying focused and the guys are at times running around like chickens with their heads cut off kind of thing. And it's a mix. They're also in uncharted territory. So, Dad, you helped put these together for Johnny and Jimmy with this, and me in my Air Force days, and blah blah blah. So, a lot of experience doing that. But these guys are
zero experience,
clueless, right? This is uncharted territory for all of them, and the event alone is boggling just to be at it, much less on the issues to go. And then you're right, you made the point that Jesus is he's busy with Matthew planning what he needs to say. And you talked about this before, that we didn't think about Jesus actually thinking about the words he wanted to speak. And I loved that element of it. I think it's important for me anyways. So he leaves that to them, each in their own role and part in the pieces that they bring to the puzzle. And each of them, if you look at it, when you start to this is one of those first times, even for me, big is like, okay, so what were the characters like? And so Dallas is just throwing out some ideas. He's throwing out some, well, okay, this can work. And if you start thinking about the pieces and who the people are, then you start to see, I can see what they bring to the table, right? We get where Judas, what he's going to bring to the table. And underlined, don't forget, nobody, including John the Immerser, right? Because he's not Baptist. I keep saying this all the time. That John, that they still think he's there to conquer Rome, right? So they're ready for, what do? We need to break him out and all this thing that they're going to go do, because they're going, he can't be taken because we're on this thing.
Yeah.
And so and Judas is going to be on board with this all the way too. And let's not, when we get to Judas at the end, it'd be interesting to see how they portray him. But there's stuff that I've already taken notes on. I want us to really chew on and think about, is that Judas reacted in the way because Jesus wasn't being who he's expected to be. But don't forget, we had Peter in the garden cut off an ear because he already thought, you've got it wrong. I'm going to cut off the ear, and it starts right now. And Jesus rebukes him and heals the ear of the man that's putting him in cuffs and taking him away. So we have this challenge with this. So, but so Dad, you mentioned Shmuel and he's being challenged with a lot of things. There's things that are mulling in his brain. So what about Shmuel, like, made you interested, struggle a bit with Shmuel?
Well, the thing that he kept trying to bring the guy back to nailing Jesus. He was trying. The guy kept saying, if this guy's doing this, he's going to set up for his boy to look like a hero in all of this. And they were saying, well, that's really not the truth. It's really not happening that way. It's happening. And he kept trying to but the guy didn't want to hear that. Right. All he wanted to hear is he was causing trouble. And this was going to place his boy in the premier seat. Yeah. Yeah, in the Sanhedrin or that group. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was interesting that they went in with a different idea in mind, and that guy took it and steered him in a different direction before they were leaving. He says, I want this, this, this. You got to write all this down so I can present it. And so Shmuel is now becoming, I almost said a word that I shouldn't say, but he's becoming something that starts with an S that isn't playing out the way he wants it to.
Right.
And so it's good. The other guy that's with him too, I can't remember his name, but he's struggling too with it because this guy's taken in a totally different direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's what I noticed and was talking about.
Yeah, Shmuel's has an interesting, because Shmuel, if he believes what he believes, and this is going to come back to haunt us down the road, but if he believes what he believes, then what he's doing, believe it or not, if he believes what he believes, believe it or not,
is right.
He's doing it the right way. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
But he also wants it done properly as well. It's not just about doing things. He understands the need. He understands that these need to be validated. The question gets tossed back at Shmuel is, what if when you find out what it is, that he didn't do something that you said, like he healed,
right,
but it wasn't on Shabbat, and there was a step back for a second. It's like,
there was.
Okay, because what are you really after in that scenario? So there's those challenges that goes with Shmuel because he's not comfortable with the civil battle. There is at that time a lot, and part of this is tied to Jewish history. Dallas's chat in there is not uneducated. It's not just a whim. He's coming up with this fantastical story. That's actually a subplot. That kind of battle is going on. Because I think we have it in our minds that every single Pharisee was all in on Jesus going down, and we'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Okay. So we like to umbrella things. We love umbrellaing things, and so we get Shmuel in this challenge of what's going on because he's going, what if he doesn't? Da da da. And hey, he's doing this, he's doing that. We're not unconvinced. So it draws in, and it's echoes of Nicodemus type questions bouncing around on there.
I think we're going to see, and well, I don't know how Dallas is going to bring it out, but I think the same thing we don't really think about at the time was going on even with some of the Romans. I don't think all the Romans were against Jesus necessarily either. And so, and obviously, when you start seeing the journeys of Paul and you see the number of Romans that come around, that you realize, okay. And even, and that's one of the things that stood out to me was I really never thought of, when Jesus is giving the Sermon on the Mount and he's talking to this huge crowd, that there were Romans in the background also.
It's a mixed multitude.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
It's a mixed multitude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And we don't think of mixed multitudes. The first mixed multitude that was a big group was in the Exodus, right? We have a mixed multitude. very much a mixed multitude. But here we get an echo of that a bit. You're right, with a mixed multitude. And who are the people that are hearing? And if we really pay attention to some of the stories with Jesus around, even the ones they don't cover in the Chosen, that the players involved are not who you'd expect.
Yeah.
And their actions are not what you'd expect. And Jesus says, hey, if these guys are reacting this way,
right,
I should expect a little more there. Jesus mentions that the Sermon on the Mount was his manifesto. How comfortable are you with that phrase? It's an interesting thought.
I didn't hear it.
Okay.
I thought what I heard was what he wanted to say is he wanted to. Matthew said, "You got too many negatives," and he started throwing some things out, and you could tell that some of them Jesus, it was sinking into him. Oh yeah, okay, that. But I didn't hear the manifesto part.
Yeah, no, he called it his manifesto. Now, I'm not uncomfortable with it. I just wondered, it's not a word that you would automatically assume, because when we think of manifestos, it's a charged word. Okay? Because if you've done any history, usually when they coin the phrase manifesto, it's oft not accompanied with something that we think of as necessarily good. With Hitler, Stalin, the big famous manifestos. And there's a bunch of other people too. And they're not all, in the Jews, but the phrase was interesting. Okay. So manifesto. Okay. Manifesto, a document, right? So this would have been a speech, but let's bite with this. A document publicly declaring the position or program of its issuer. A manifesto advances a set of ideas, opinions, or views, but can also lay out a plan of action. And I went, Its manifestos often mark the adoption of a new vision, approach, program, or genre. Sometimes they criticize the present state of affairs, but also announce its passing, proclaiming the advent of a new movement or era. Now, so I was comfortable with the manifesto, but Jesus doesn't spend any time slamming Rome. Matter of fact, if we look through, we have this deal. Rome is a fly on the wall.
Right.
This is another thing we think about. His statements are there, but he's there for, I'll bite with the term revolution. Okay. But it's not a revolt. There's a difference. Right. That is a radical shift. In other words, we've gone from, I get where we're turning something upside down. That's what I say all the time. I'm an upside down thinker. Totally on that. But I'm not to revolt. Because he never taught revolt. Not once. So
he says two things. He says that he wants to give them a map or directions. See, I didn't catch the manifesto part, but I did catch the map or directions. And that shows a completely different picture than what I would conjure up about manifesto. So thank you for that. Because I can see why he would do that, why he would call it that. That he wants to give them a different direction. He wants to take them down a different road and give them the directions or the map to that new way of thinking, that new place to go.
Well, and it's based on what you know. That's our discomfort is from our churchy side. I'll be the first to bite, is that we keep thinking it's something new. Okay, so we've had this, and we have everything that the most gross misrepresentation of that is replacement theology. Right. That's taking it to its almost unholy extreme. But in this point where he's trying to, he says, okay, you know this. It's not saying, because why talk about something like that when you can say, I'm just going to give you a whole new set of game. Here you go. Here's the printout. Here you go. Matthew can write it all down. and copies show up later. When you realize everything he talks about is based on what already exists. He just says where he's taken it to the heart, just like we have this thing about heart, I'll bite, but with it comes the same stuff. And we're going to begin the next episode with me making a statement about something that, yeah, I already scribbled my notes for that, and we're already going to scrub stuff. So ought to be fun.
Well, real quick.
Yeah.
What was interesting, and I loved how Matthew was trying to get him to come at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
We were talking at work, I guess it was yesterday, and the one of the field captains was trying to get management on board with some changes that needed to take place that wasn't going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
We can come in and we can say this needs to happen, and
right.
here's what needs to take place.
Right.
And someone suggested, why not, rather than criticize the things that they're doing wrong, reward the things they're doing right and take it from a positive perspective. And I loved the way that Dallas, as Jesus started saying, okay, how about if I phrase it this way? Blessed are the poor, blessed are the merciful. And as he was saying each of those, they would flash to one of the disciples or one of the followers.
Oh,
and
big.
you got it. It gave me chills as I was watching it, because you got a visual of, oh, that's what he's talking about.
What can that look like? There you go.
Yeah. Exactly. And that was Jesus's whole point, is what could life look like if we approached it this way?
There you go.
And I love that.
That's it. That's the key. And we see him saying, I think this way, and I'll show you my example. 1, what I do. 2, how I treat people. And 3, look at those around me. In other words, let me show you examples of that. Right. Because the people are, they're looking. Okay. I made this point on another one of my Dusty Feet deals, where I talked about these disciples lived their lives, especially after, they're struggling through here now, we get this, but post resurrection, they lived their lives just like Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Okay. And I'm going to wrap with this statement. We love to hear this. We don't like living it. Okay. So, and that's how we're going to go with the other one. We're going to creep there, is that we love to hear the words, right? And we know them and da-da-da-da. But we want to be the one screaming. We want to be the one poking. We want to be the one, they want to go and rescue him and da-da-da-da. And his words that he gets done doing are the opposite of that. But we don't like that. We don't like that on everyday today. And so we think the deal. So yeah, that's what I like about us having these conversations and do that, is that make people, hey, think about it a second. Because I love where people go, oh, those great words on the Sermon on the Mount. And I said, it's great.
Are you doing it?
Yeah. How, as they say, I'm going to cover with Shabbat thing that's coming up. And one of the things that Beth, she brings up in the beginning, says, how's that working for you?
Exactly.
It's a great, it's a great line. And I think it's something that we'll continue to bring up and discuss as we go. So any last words?
I just like the when his mom said, if not now, when? And Jesus finished it with saying when. If not now, when? And they touched foreheads. Yeah. And that's going to what you're talking about, Bob, and going about all we're talking about. And if not now, when? When am I going to do this? When am I going to start living like this? When am I going to start fill in the blank? So
yeah, and
that's it.
Yeah, it's a poser. Jimmy?
Yeah. No, Pop, I think you said it. That's exactly what I was thinking. So good wrap up.
If now when. And go back and watch these folks. The lasso closeout. Just want y'all to kind of go back, listen again, and think about salt again. They mentioned a few different ideas about salt, at least from my churchy days. some of the elements they talked about with salt isn't things they talked about. And I went, maybe there's more than meets the eye to some things that we just automatically take for granted. So those things that we think we know, fun to stretch ourselves. Okay. So, point to ponder. Again, we're going to wrap around to this same point because these guys, the same ones that are confused, scared, anticipatory, right? They're anticipating, they're wanting, they're wishing, they want to make this man that they know, they think, they believe is the Messiah proud. And these are the ones that he chose. And he still thinks, and like you, they're the best. So thanks for with us tonight on another Sons of the Father on the Dusty Feet.